35-year-old David Williams worked in management at a car dealership in Cardiff, Wales. He was a happy husband with 2 young sons and a third on the way, and he greatly enjoyed his life. Everything changed when he received a fatal diagnosis of a cancerous tumor on his spine. Doctors told him that he would never live past the age of 40 and predicted that he would be completely paralyzed within 2 years. Despite a surgery, his prospects were grim, and shortly after his third son was born, Williams considered ending his own life to spare his wife and children the emotional pain of watching the illness progress. There are 2 radically different possible responses to situations like David Williams. One response is euthanasia. The other is palliative care. Euthanasia is the killing of a patient in order to terminate suffering. It is legal in Canada, throughout most of the United States, it is legal in Canada, throughout most of Europe, and in 5 states here in America. In these places, a terminally ill patient can request a lethal injection or an overdose of painkillers to end his or her life. A doctor can comply with that request without legal penalties as long as a second opinion confirms that the illness was terminal and the patient was mentally healthy. This practice masquerades under such names as death with dignity, aid in dying, and mercy killing. But we must not be fooled by these clever euphemisms. Euthanasia contributes to a throwaway culture, which discards the elderly and infirm based on their supposed quality of life, without ever considering their inherent right to life. All across America, the debate is raging over euthanasia laws which have the power to uphold human life or degrade it. As pro-life people, we must speak the truth about euthanasia, advocate for alternative options like palliative care, and affirm that human dignity is undiminished by suffering. Many proponents of aid in dying argue that euthanasia is necessary because it offers patients an escape from unendurable pain. However, a study published by the American Medical Association found that physical suffering is not the primary motivation among those requesting euthanasia. Rather, the most common reason for euthanasia is fear. The fear of burdening one's family, of being left alone, and of losing dignity. When you look at American culture, it is easy to see where these fears originate. Our society places great importance on personal independence. We Americans have enshrined the image of the self-made man as someone who pulls himself up by his bootstraps, goes out into the world, and grabs success on his own terms. We define this success by the amount of money a person earns, or the enjoyment they get out of their job and daily activities. As a culture, this is where we place our self-worth. It's no wonder, then, that people are afraid of losing the things that make them feel successful and valuable. Euthanasia is not the solution to these fears. Rather, euthanasia causes these fears by promoting a throwaway culture. A society that routinely kills the sick, depressed, and elderly makes it clear that human life is considered only qualitatively valuable. But human dignity does not come from an individual's independence, nor does it come from personal accomplishments, nor does it come from the status of one's health. Independence, success, and health are all qualitative characteristics that can be possessed in varying degrees. But human dignity is a gift that everyone has received in equal measure. We're all made in the image and likeness of God, created to receive His love and share it with others. This great dignity is not diminished by suffering. Rather, suffering can deepen love and set a good example for others if it is endured with graciousness and courage. When people receive sudden bad news, they are often overwhelmed by fear and anxiety, just like David Williams was. It is dreadfully easy for a terminal patient to get lost in his or her own worries about the future, which is why there must be a culture of love to affirm the patient's worth despite their physical and emotional pain. The impact of such a loving culture is clearly shown by the rest of David Williams' story. Still depressed, he was admitted to hospice at the age of 36. There he met a doctor specialized in end-of-life care, who put his cancer in remission and convinced him that as long as there is life, there is hope. Williams returned to his family, in a wheelchair, but still able to enjoy the many blessings God had given him. A few years later, Williams' wife unexpectedly developed liver cancer and died very abruptly. As he and his sons grieved, Williams thanked God for the gift of life and the chance to father his children. He realized that if he had given up on life during his own struggle with cancer a few years prior, his sons would now be orphans. He said, quote, "I used to look at the baby in the cot and think, I just can't do this. I look at him now, and I can see me in him, and I just thank God I chose life. I am more than grateful to be here with my children now." End quote. Williams is currently 51 years old, having far outlived the doctor's grim predictions. He travels throughout Wales with his family, advocating pro-life alternatives to euthanasia. Palliative care, also known as hospice, is one such pro-life alternative. When recovery from an illness is not possible, palliative care is an end-of-life option that upholds human dignity and seeks to minimize physical suffering. Medical needs are met by trained nurses and caregivers, allowing the family time to provide emotional support, seek reconciliation in their relationships, and honor the wishes of their loved one regarding the estate and their finances. Palliative care allowed my dear friend and neighbor, Miss Gwynn, to spend the last year of her life with her son by her side, cherishing family memories and receiving love from her many friends. I know that she died at peace, despite her physical suffering from cancer. I saw it in her face. She smiled and cried as we sang her into heaven. When faced with a culture that deeply misunderstands human dignity, we have the privilege and responsibility of being joyful pro-life witnesses. We can carry out this mission by praying for the sick and elderly, visiting nursing homes, being patient with elderly relatives, and affirming human dignity whenever unjust laws threaten it. When advocates of death with dignity claim that euthanasia is compassion and that death is the only comfort we can offer to those in pain, we need to show real compassion. The word compassion comes from two Latin roots, cum, which means with, and pati, which means to suffer. We demonstrate compassion not by killing a person in pain, but by being willing to enter into their pain and to suffer with them. That is the prayer of presence to which we are called. That is true mercy. Thank you.